Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the February 23rd meeting of the New Bern Board of Aldermen. The prayer tonight will be given by Alderman Aster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce to you Kenny Monroe. Kenny, if you would come up. Kenny was hired to the microphone today. Kenny was hired in the fire department as a fire specialist in 2001 and has progressed up to the rank of captain and is the fire department's fire chaplain. And he's going to lead us in today's prayer.
Good evening to the mayor, board, city manager, his staff, and his citizens. With all heads bowed, eyes closed, let us pray. Dear wise and loving Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who's gathered here today. Thank you for your many blessings. In the word, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, city officials, the city of New Bern, and for this meeting. I am asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom, a sense of welfare, true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, confident in what's good and fitting. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give them an assurance of what would be pleasing and what would benefit those who live around our beloved city. It is in your Son, Jesus' name, I do pray. Amen.
Amen. Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bingle. Here. Alderwoman Harris.
Present.
Alderman Aster.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Okay, at this time, the consent agenda, do we have a motion on that?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is. Second.
Motion second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 5, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Board. First item on our agenda tonight is a presentation on Juneteenth. So on behalf of the #Project Restore movement, Talina Massey is here with us to share a PowerPoint presentation on the upcoming Juneteenth celebration. For the last 4 years, Juneteenth activities have been organized by #Project Restore and carried out by local community members. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Ms. Massey, and she's got a presentation for you.
Good evening, Mayor, Board, city staff, citizens in attendance, and citizens watching us over the internet. It's that time of year again. It is also Black History Month, so I'd like to wish you all a happy Black History Month. And I'm excited to bring you this year's Juneteenth of New Bern presentation. This is our 4th year now, so we are very excited with the advancements that we've had, and I'm excited to share some of this information with you and everyone who's watching tonight. So, I present Juneteenth of New Bern 2021, Past, Present, and Beyond, powered by Project Restore. I would like to thank our supporting contributors, Sharon Bryant at Tryon Palace, Carrie Gallagher of the African American Heritage and Cultural Center, and Raymona Green, one of our amazing hero educators and also a representative of Project Restore. So let's get to what is Juneteenth. I stand up here every year and explain to you guys exactly what it is, so I had some assistance this year in explaining to you all and everyone watching who may or may not know what it is.
Hello, my name is Earl Imes, Curator, African American Agriculture and Community History at the North Carolina Museum of History. And we're here to talk about Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865. Which is a celebration and commemoration of freedom when United States Major General Gordon Granger arrived at the port of Galveston, Texas, with the news of the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment, which was moving through the states for ratification. And on June 19th, with United States colored troops in tow, the general commenced to spreading the news of freedom and emancipation throughout the entire state of Texas, which of course is the furthest west Confederate states of the 11 states in the Confederacy. He would literally have to go throughout the 253 counties in Texas, and takes an entire year from June of 1865 until the commissions of the United States colored troops expire in June 30th, 1866, and that news and that mission is ended. So it's a misnomer to say that it took one day to spread the news just in Texas. It took many months for the news of the emancipation and the circulation of the 13th Amendment to get to Texas. So the Juneteenth moniker arises from the 19th of June to the 365 days and the end of June 30th, 1866. But let's discuss those events in context, particularly related to North Carolina, because freedom had been earned on the soil here in North Carolina. First, with the famous Battle of Fort Fisher, North Carolina, the largest amphibious assault before D-Day in World War II took place on the shores of North Carolina in January of 1865, resulting in the United States colored troops capturing the Battery Buchanan and the Confederate behemoth known as Fort Fisher. And once Fort Fisher fell, the fall and the collapse of the Confederacy was imminent. Fort Fisher and that battle directly resulted in the United States House of Representatives passing the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which outlaws slavery. And once we outlaw slavery, we earn freedom, not only for those formerly enslaved men, women, and children, but we earn freedom from the scourge of slavery.
So we began our public programs of Juneteenth in New Bern in 2018. If you guys remember, I stood before you and we did the proclamation that year, which is pictured up there. And it has an asterisk next to it because community conversations were had starting in 2016 about revamping Juneteenth in New Bern, and planning began in 2017, and we were able to then begin executing in 2018. Prior to 2016, there were several programs that had occurred here in New Bern to which I was not a part of, but I know in the history it says that we've had some sister events with cities like Kinston and things like that in the past. But 2018 begins our consistent celebration of Juneteenth in New Bern. And that year we celebrated with an essay contest from Project Restore, a presentation at Tryon Palace, the History Center, and again, we had the proclamation signed by the city and by Craven County that year. Bring us to Juneteenth week in 2019. From 2018 to 2019, you can see a much more robust list of activities the next year. And that followed the interest from the previous year. We brought down Dr. Denard. We had events going consecutively throughout the week. We were even able to bring in Duff Fest, other residence councils, different organizations, nonprofits such as YUP, businesses such as BrainTap, and just various other projects. The Arts Council got involved as well with the Juneteenth display, the Omega Center, our colored troops, and the community as a whole throughout all of New Bern celebrated that year. Then came COVID. And in 2020, we were not able to celebrate Juneteenth as we had in the past, but we found a new normal that year. We were able to promote other cities, other businesses got involved, young entrepreneurs, Art, again, was a focus that year, as well as different programs. We highlighted programs in Havelock and Bayboro and all throughout Eastern North Carolina that year. And we also celebrated at the Omega Center with a program that was well attended by some of our public officials and our community, even though we were socially distanced. And we also provided fireworks that year. And to see the children's faces in Duffy Field that got to witness those fireworks, and all of the children that actually came across New Bern to see that program, was amazing, honestly. So then that brings us to where we are presently. So national celebrations in cities like Rockford, Illinois, Philadelphia, and Buffalo, with dedicated annual municipal support, are experiencing not only increased quality of life through the celebration of cultural differences, but also positive economic impact through the various festivals, concessions, entertainment, and increased tourism that those cities have enjoyed while celebrating Juneteenth. In 2007, North Carolina became the 26th state to recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday. My apologies. As a state holiday observance when it is recognized nationally. Since several North Carolina counties have offered Juneteenth as a holiday, including Wake, Orange, Bertie, and Cook. There are also several North Carolina cities that now offer June 19th as a paid city holiday, to include Carrboro, Monroe, Durham, Greensboro, Apex, Winston-Salem, Vance, Raleigh, and a handful of other North Carolina municipalities. Currently, our city has a proclamation on record that recognizes Juneteenth as a day of celebration and urges all citizens to participate in celebrations and festivities to recognize the significance of this day and celebrate the freedom and achievements of African Americans, signed by Mayor Outlaw on March 13, 2018. And currently, New Bern's cultural, artistic, business, journalistic, philanthropic, wellness, and educational communities continue to show interest in planning and the execution of future Juneteenth events. Reginald Green said the celebration of Juneteenth is not only a showcase event of the African American community's positive contribution to the American way of life, but it also makes a statement for all Americans that the United States truly is the land of the free. Juneteenth is an expression and extension of American freedom, and like the 4th of July, a time for all Americans to celebrate our independence, human rights, civil rights, and our freedom. So that brings us to June 2021, Juneteenth 2021. What do we have in store? So our community, we have asked and put out requests and are currently seeing community collaborators come together and plan and organize virtual and in-person events for this year. Paying close attention, obviously, to CDC guidelines for safe social distancing, but we have also had the conversation in deciding that while we have in the past had individual grassroots efforts to individually celebrate Juneteenth, it really will behoove our city to have a targeted celebration supported by our city. So we are asking of our city that you guys work with the Juneteenth organizers and the African American community to establish an annually celebrated city-supported event during the weekend closest to June 19th in solidarity of the proclamation, that directive that says we're to participate in celebrations and festivities to recognize the significance of this day as written by our mayor. Recommended services that we've discussed that we're asking of the city could include things like services that are provided in some of our other annual events, which can include street closures, portable restrooms, trash collection, and most notably, because of the comments that we received last year from most of the youth that attended our program, sponsorship or support of fireworks. We do realize that the city has one event every year that they provide fireworks for, but again, to see the looks on the children's faces, I'm more than welcome to assist and help support and organize a second day, because it really was outstanding to see their faces and see how they enjoyed celebrating Juneteenth last year. And the fireworks that were bought last year were all donation from our community members who wanted to see the kids see that excitement, especially during a time such as we're in now. So what does Juneteenth look like beyond 2021? We hope progress. We hope more and more people become interested in the celebration of Juneteenth, become interested in the history and the rich history that even North Carolina provided to Juneteenth. We are asking from our community members to help us establish a Juneteenth Council composed of community collaborators, supporters, volunteers, and residents with the common goal of streamlining the Juneteenth and New Bern collaboration process to work as liaisons to the city of New Bern and surrounding cities and towns for an annual event coordination and to grow interest in the history and continued celebration of Juneteenth in New Bern and surrounding areas as we have seen in the past. Another ask that we are requesting that we ask that you think about going forward, when we think about progress, is consider adopting a forward-thinking resolution to recognize Juneteenth as a paid holiday for city employees to encourage the celebration of the freedom and achievements of their fellow Americans, as some of our sister cities and counties have also done. Questions?
Thank you so much for your presentation.
I appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen to this presentation again this year. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to visit the Juneteenth of New Bern Facebook page. You can email Project Restore 716@gmail.com, or you can feel free to give me a call at 252-497-8838. I am more than happy to help anyone that would like to learn more about this.
Thank you, Ms. Massey, for that presentation.
Of course.
Yes, thank you. Talina, I do have a question. Do you already have an agenda in place, things that you're already lining up, or is that still in progress?
It's still pretty loose. We do have like a loose agenda from organizations that have called us to kind of coordinate what's going on with Juneteenth this year, asking questions of whether or not it's safe, or, you know, our ideas of what we should be doing. So we have a list of people who have expressed interest and kind of what their idea is for this year. But again, it's still kind of free-forming, and the interest and the requests are coming in.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I just, with the discussion of the questions, what is the process for us to discuss possibly working with them in regards to the fireworks on Juneteenth?
About the cost of fireworks, or just the discussion of fireworks?
Well, yeah, like, what would it cost to have fireworks on Juneteenth in celebration of Juneteenth?
It really just depends on the level of fireworks. Obviously, 4th of July, Foster, I want to say, is about 30 grand. Is that correct? 20 to 30 grand? Or it used to be, I don't know.
So for the annual 4th of July celebration, that's about a 20 to 25 minute fireworks show, and the cost for the fireworks is about $18,000 annually for that.
Where did they shoot them off last year? What was
We were at the Omega Center.
Excuse me?
We were at the Omega Center.
So you shot them off from there, and they went up from there. My thought process is, I guess, to take a step back and ask, as a city-sponsored event, all the other city-sponsored events that we have, it's typically an exchange of services. So the city fireworks that we have, that's not a city event. That's put on by our city Parks and Rec. The other list that is there, such as Mum Fest, some of the other things you stated, are all services. So we provide trash, in-kind services, but not necessarily, a funding source like that. Anybody you would have, like Triumph Palace, when they do something, they get sponsors. What have there, but I think it's a great event, and I know fireworks can be a whole lot cheaper because we've done them down in Morehead City for ball teams and things like that. So it just depends where you're going to shoot them, how many you're going to shoot, whatever. But I just know, as far as working with the city-sponsored events, I was on the board at the time we invented that, kind of brought it together. It was to name the events that would get in-kind services. Otherwise, you have to pay for street barricades, porta-johns, different things like that, and that's how we separated. If you weren't a city-sponsored event, you had to pay for those amenities. If you were a city-sponsored event, it was an in-kind trade. So, I mean, that's
You know,
just the information that I,
Yeah, I completely understand. I just feel like, with the significance of what the day means, it is the freedom, 13th Amendment outlawed slavery. I think, we do the 4th of July and we have fireworks. It would be nice for the city to take on actually celebrating Juneteenth per the proclamation, and then work with the community and that was organizing to be able to have the same type of services that Mumfest and street cafes and everything else have, so that it's, being inclusive in the city. So, and our sister cities are doing it. I know we always like to look to see what our other sister cities are doing, but it's probably about over 10 cities that are actually making it a paid holiday, and it's, showing respect and understanding and caring about your African American employees and then the African Americans that reside in the city of New Bern and pay taxes. So I would really like for us to have a conversation and put it on the agenda to talk about it, for the city to take over doing some sort of celebration for Juneteenth, and be in support of working with the committee to be able to do in-kind services.
Ms. Massey, I know that you said that you have a resolution also from a proclamation from the county as well. Have you reached out to the county for a joint effort as well for support? Okay, I just want to make sure. And I too would like to go a little farther and have more in-depth conversation about making this a city-sponsored event, and also possibly a paid holiday.
I guess the two things we should probably think about and consider is if it's a city-sponsored event in the framework of the other city-sponsored event, or is it a city event, like 4th of July is a city event? In that case, it comes under Foster, it's his show, his staff, whatever, now, input, so I don't know how that would work, but I think that's the way we have to look at it. It should be one thing or the other.
I like that idea, if it's something that,
Foster, don't beat me up, please.
I'm not trying to put them on the spot, but I'm sure that if it was something that we voted on to make it a city event, just so it's inclusive, I'm sure he's willing to work with the committee, because we started off with one day and we're now at a week. And we work with all of these organizations, and to be able at the end of that week of Juneteenth to have a great celebration, I think it would be amazing, and also bring some more unity into our city, coming together. I think it would be great. And then, if it's possible to add it on as a paid holiday, because of the significance of it, I think it would be great as well, since other cities are doing it. And more than likely, eventually, I believe it's going to be, a national holiday. But we can be forward thinking to make that decision, just to, like I said, show respect and understanding and support of what Juneteenth means to our Black and brown employees and citizens. So I appreciate you guys, and I will look forward to putting it on the agenda for another day to have a discussion. Thank you again, Project Restore, for coming and, presenting.
For the next budget, or for the next time we put it on the agenda, I would like some information so that we could get some costs and find out what the cost it is to have a holiday. I think currently we have, 12 paid holidays this year?
This year in 2021 was adopted, there were 12.
12 paid holidays, and every time we add something, or do we add something and take something away? So if we add this, do we take the day after Thanksgiving? Do we take, something like that, just to even it out? Because at what point do you say, I don't know what the cost is, but I think that would be a determining factor, again, for me, just the balance of how many
And it could go
how many
to,
days.
obviously, we've already passed the calendar, so it would be more just like we said, a future ask, just to see what, what the numbers are. So it's just to get the information out there. Let's have a conversation and we'll decide from there. I just think, it would behoove us and, you know, what the community's asking for, because this is a community effort, you know, to just, you know, see where we can go from it. And, you know, there may be other things that come out of it, more ideas or anything, but I just think it would be good to have a deeper conversation, so.
I agree.
Okay. Anything else on that? Thank you for the presentation. Let's go to item number 6.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 6 is a public hearing and consideration of the board to adopt a resolution approving a residential property periodic inspection program per section 2.1.2 of the redevelopment plan. One of the requirements established in the redevelopment plan is the creation of a residential property periodic inspection program. There's been a lot of discussion at the redevelopment commission that has brought us to this point. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our staff. They're going to give you a synopsis of what this program will entail and the steps that they've taken to bring us to this point today.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Tonight we're here to conduct a public hearing to establish the residential inspection program enforcement plan for the redevelopment area. This is part of the requirements of creating the plan, is to hold this public hearing, so we're doing that today. So what is the residential inspection program enforcement plan? It's a plan that's designed to proactively identify and remediate housing that does not meet current city minimum standards in the redevelopment area specifically. This is one of the programs that we are offered essentially from the General Assembly to be specific to redevelopment areas. How does it work? Our minimum housing officer for the city will conduct inspections on residential properties that are within the redevelopment area. Inspections will be conducted by priority sub-areas within the redevelopment area, and when violations of the minimum housing code or related codes are visible from the outside of the property. However, most importantly, probable cause is not required to conduct an inspection within the redevelopment area. If a property is scheduled to be inspected, the property owner and tenant will be given 15 days notice prior to the inspection date. However, any homeowner or tenant can request an inspection at any time. This inspection program applies equally to both owner-occupied housing and also rental properties within the redevelopment area. There's no charge for any of these inspections. If a property fails minimum inspection, the housing officer will provide the tenant and the property owner a copy of the inspection checklist, and that will detail all the failures and areas of concern for the property. If you fail the inspection, if the property fails inspection, the minimum housing officer will schedule a meeting with the property owner to discuss the deficiencies and establish a reasonable time frame to bring the property up to minimum standards, minimum building code standards. For those owner-occupied houses, homeowners who qualify as low to moderate income individuals, if they have deficiencies upon inspection are required to make repairs. If they are owner-occupied and qualify as low to moderate income under our HUD guidelines, they will be transferred into our minimum housing repair program, into the CDBG program for repairs at no cost to them. To be very clear, that option does not exist for landlords. So there was only as we had the discussion maybe at our last meeting, that the CDBG urgent repair program only applies to owner-occupied housing. So it's essentially a proactive inspection program that the General Assembly has specifically allowed in redevelopment areas. This is not something that we can do outside of a redevelopment area in order to bring the standard of housing in redevelopment areas up to the minimum standards of the building code. And that's how the program works. We are required to conduct a public hearing, but I'll answer any questions you may have before we do that.
Yes, ma'am.
In regards to the inspections, is it equivalent to what the city already does outside of the redevelopment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's the exact same process.
Now, it's just within the redevelopment area that this will happen, or is it specific streets?
It is allowed in the entire redevelopment area. Once, if the program is approved tonight, if the board approves it, we'll go back, the commission will then go back and identify priority sub-areas where we can take down specific chunks at a time instead of being haphazard and kind of following, chasing our tail. Essentially, we're just going to break it down into individual areas and then attack each area individually.
Then the last question is, if you go through this process and the individual is not able to get the house up to par and they don't qualify for CDBG grants, what's the next step?
Well, yeah, there's probably a lot to unpack in that question. There's a lot of different scenarios. Non-owner occupied landlords will go through our minimum housing process and be required to bring it up to minimum code. Now, we're not talking about, anything crazy and kind of upfits. This is very minimum codes, and it's really not all that difficult to achieve. Anybody else who is not low, moderate income would be required to make those fixes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Odom.
Jeff, what percentage of the residential housing in the redevelopment zone is leased versus owner-occupied?
Last time we ran the numbers, it was about 78% of all the property within the redevelopment area is non-owner occupied rentals.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Are there examples of cities in North Carolina that have approved this?
No, off the top of my head, Durham.
And, I've read this and I'm very interested. I think it's an important tool for the Redevelopment Commission. I know that they need as much help as they can get. My concern is that whether or not, while we're going to possibly approve this, and the possibilities of either the City of New Bern or the Redevelopment Commission assisting property owners through items like I've pointed out through the years, like Fable, PWC, Austin, Texas, programs through their electric enterprise funds that make readily available financing at low interest rates to assist these owners of property. My main concern on this is making sure before we up the ante, so to speak, with the property owners, that City of New Bern itself is doing our due diligence and our, for instance, the houses that continually sit around New Bern, roofs imploding. I hear it's legal. We can't. I'm like ready to put a $300,000 recovery fund over to the side and tear these things down. If we get sued, we get sued. But they've got to come down, and I just don't. I'm really concerned that this is an important tool, but there are other things that need to happen, and only the city can do it. And I'm ready to really ante up the game if we approve this by figuring out a way for the city to get these houses that are precluding and impeding investment in the inner city. I'm ready to see something happen to where we can encourage owners of property and single-family home ownership. I mean, infill is ready to happen in New Bern, but this is not the only tool we need. I guess I said enough, and so anybody else got something?
So Mayor, are you saying that we as a city, we should come up with some type of program that we can, for those homeowners outside of the Redevelopment Commission that they're not low to moderate income, but they can't afford to make the repairs, that we can come as a city and join in with the CDBG program like we had once before? It was low income, it was a low income CDBG. I don't know, Jeff, if he was here or not. It was for over in the Washington Park area where,
Yep.
Okay. Is that possible that we can do that as well?
Well, that was CDBG funds.
Right,
So that was a
okay.
different program. That was before we became an entitlement community, and we would compete at the state level.
Okay.
Essentially, every year, we would submit a project to the state for them to fund. So that was an example of something that got funded. But we have our own CDBG funds now. And again, they do apply across the city, essentially.
Well, and you know the program I've mentioned before in Charlotte, where in addition to what buyouts or elevations occur, the city of Charlotte actually, I think they actually increased their taxes a little bit to provide additional monies for the donut hole areas of things that didn't quite qualify, but if this one were elevated, it would encourage others to do the same, or, you know, I just think there's some missing links here in addition to this. This is good. I'm probably for it. Of course, we have to have a public hearing and everything, but this is not the end all. I just continually, till my last day on the board, I'm going to stress somebody figuring out how to get these houses that need to be demolished down. It just doesn't sit well, you know, that who else is going to correct that problem as City of New Bern does?
So but to my understanding, or maybe I'm wrong, but to my understanding, a lot of those houses that are dilapidated and needs to come down, as you say, Mayor, because I'm aware of a lot of properties that need to come down. Isn't a lot of that tied up with air properties? There's a lot of errors involved, and that's the reason why?
Every one of them.
Okay.
Mr. Davis, what happened some 15, 20 years ago? There was, how many houses got demolished at one time, and what was the end result? There was a lawsuit, is that correct?
Yes, sir. There were a number of lawsuits.
Could you historically give us an accounting of that?
I think there were several hundred buildings and houses torn down, 2 lawsuits. Damages at the end of that were about $150,000 plus legal fees.
But again, as an example, in today's market with the Redevelopment Commission and the potential for infill, and the board is very serious about housing. Yes, ma'am. If the end result is that, you know, 100 houses got built in the next 10 years and you had an average value of $100,000 and you took the tax value of that and figured up the ad valorem tax revenues, it would more than pay back any potential lawsuit. Yes, ma'am.
I very well understand where you're coming from, Mayor, and that brings me to a thought process in regards to if we did pass this, what are we doing or what do we have in place for you know, non-owner occupied residents where the landlord decides not to fix it, the owner doesn't want to fix it, or what about those residents? And if we need affordable housing and we're not meeting that quota based on the population and the low income and somewhat homelessness of individuals, if we push this through, that might be pushing the needle a lot faster to allowing the redevelopment. I know in their previous plan to go take these properties and get this, you know what I'm saying? So what type of effect would that have if, like now, it's a good tool, but does it need to be pushed forward now until we start having housings, or do you think it could be, you know, on the same playing field and not have a big effect on what happens to these residents if repairs don't happen? Like, do they if they legally, are they legally binded to fix them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's a legal process, it's a hearing essentially, where all the deficiencies are noted and it gets recorded at the clerk's office with the property essentially.
You know, I dare say if the leadership at the time, Mr. Davis, that went ahead and demolished those, if they hadn't taken that risk and what happened, the lawsuit, you know what? We still have 50 houses sitting in New Bern that would look like 50 more that need to come down, you know? And I applaud the leadership of the past board that did that. Yes, sir.
Jeff, obviously you can't give us a full in-depth assessment of what the minimum housing code would be, but could you just give us a couple examples of what some of those basic requirements would be, such as running water?
Working plumbing, which is an issue, more so especially now since it's been so wet. From the outside, you can see along the eaves some rotting. You can literally see into the home, like those types of issues. A lot of roof issues and and that type of thing. We don't get inside the house very much to inspect them. It's mostly a external type thing. It's pretty easy to see broken windows and termite damage. The minimum housing code says your house really has to be weatherproofed and vermin-proof essentially, so any kind of, pigeonholes, things like that, which really just, when you have one, it's a much bigger problem. It may look like a little hole on the outside, but you have water, and you have pigeons, and you have rats and squirrels getting in there, and they just wreak havoc on a home. So although most of those types of issues, it's electrical, it's a little bit of everything. But again, it's minimum code, and we're not, and again, as you know, I've been up here many, many times now, my time here with the city, and we're not about punishing people, tearing down homes. It's never our end game. Our desire is always to just bring the house up to minimum standards. And how long that takes, we'll go on for years with individual owners. As long as they're making progress to meet the minimum standards, we'll go on 2-3 years on some people, where we may have started with a 6-month order, but we're 3 years down the line, but we're still working with that owner because they're working with us in good faith. So we're very, we're flexible in that regard, and we're always working with the property owners, because compliance is always what we're after. We don't want the property, we don't want to tear things down. We want to maintain the integrity of neighborhoods. So when I hear concerns about people being displaced, that really is a situation that I can't imagine when that would happen unless the home was literally dangerous to be in. And that happens. We're doing one right now outside of the redevelopment area. But again, that's the only time, and that's a dangerous home no one should be living in. So that's a different situation altogether. But we're not talking about livability in these homes where people are living for the most part. The worst homes don't have anybody in them, and they haven't had anybody in them for years. So those are the ones that really look terrible. But a lot of the minimum housing stuff, people live in it every day. And as long as it's not a safety concern or dangerous, we're working with all these landowners and property owners to get things up into compliance all the time.
Jeff, I just want to take a step further, because, with my attendance at the redevelopment commissions, but in listening to something that Alderman Harris has stated, is the concern for rental places, and I have physically been in one that nobody should have been living in, but the person had nowhere to go. What would they do in that case? Mm-hmm. This is a tool that would be in the toolbox of the redevelopment commission that would go hand in hand with what you're working on now, and that is identifying properties that can be rehabilitated for transitional type housing. So as you're using the tool for the rental inspection and minimum standards, you're moving people into transitional housing to help with that. Is that correct?
We're working on that right now. That is one of our major focus of the redevelopment plan. Is we're doing a very good job of implementing our housing plan and going down that road of building and rehabbing new homes in the redevelopment area. But we did hear the concerns of the community and of you all, and that this displacement is a concern, valid concern, obviously. So we're working on that right now. We have a property that we're looking at right now to move and rehabilitate just for that purpose. But it does take time. These things take time. It took us a long time to get here. The Redevelopment Commission has done incredible amount of work in the past 2 years. The plan's only really been adopted for a year, and they've made incredible strides with implementing it. We're really there's going to be a lot of changes coming in over the next 12 to 24 months that will really change the face of the community and lift it up.
I have one last question after you.
So, Jeff, I'm really happy with the redevelopment commission, and I know that program is going to go over well for a lot of individuals, homeowners, and renters. But my main concern is those individual homeowners outside the redevelopment commission. Your the CDBG urgent repair program, they can qualify for that program?
Correct.
Okay. And at the point, you may not know the numbers right now, but at this point in time, how many applicants do you have, if any, for that program?
We don't have any new ones. We have older ones, that we still have on file, people that we've worked with that have just kind of fell off through the process. It's a time-consuming process for someone to go through, and a little invasive financially, and some people aren't comfortable with that. But we haven't had the program for about 2 years now, as we've been working through the backlog of funds that we've accumulated because we haven't been able to spend that money. But the idea now, moving forward, is to kind of pre-qualify those folks and queue them up. So if we have a list of 2 to 3, 4, 5 people, whatever, that are interested in the program, we're going to do the work beforehand. And then if we find 3 or 4 people that qualify and everything is good, then we'll actually go through our annual action plan through the next year and allocate those funds, because then we know they'll be spent. In the past, we were allocating the funds beforehand and then trying to fill it on the backfill with applicants. And after about 3-4 years, we kind of ran out of applicants that would qualify. And we ended up with that substantial backlog of funds that we needed to spend, which we allocated towards the Duffy Field Stormwater Project, which is really a fabulous project.
So, the other thing that worst case scenario, right, if you go into the redevelopment and you find a home that is unlivable and there's someone in there, what are the recourses for that renter if they're low income, don't have no other option? Like, are they just out on the street, or is...
Well, there's a lot of organizations that we can reach out to and assist in those situations. We've done that in the past, and it's been successful. I can think of 2 times. I mean, that really doesn't happen as often as people would think. You're talking about a home that is unsafe and unlivable, and I know what Alderman Bangle is speaking of, and that was a great example. But there's a lot of organizations in the community that we reach out to help us with those situations.
I just want to make sure everybody understands, I'm not for demolishing anything that's got potential. But I am talking about, there are quite a few homes in New Bern that the roofs are literally caving in. I'm concerned about the safety and welfare of the residents in the area, and particularly the kids. Somebody could get hurt. So that's my main concern. I think it's a little bit incredulous, I would say, maybe, that the city is going to go out and impose the inspections and require minimal property standards. And there's a house across the street that's been sitting there for 20 years that the roof's caving in. It just, I understand the legal end of it, but, leaders are supposed to figure out how to get around. If there's not a law in the books, we need to go to Raleigh and get one. But that's all I'm saying. Anybody else at this time? I'm going to go ahead and open a public hearing. Anybody like to come forward, make comments, and make any statements concerning this item, you're more than welcome to come up at this time.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second to close the public hearing. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Mayor, I just wanted to check with Jeff. I saw on your cover letter that this passed unanimous with the Redevelopment Commission, and then also it says that inspections would be conducted by priority sub-areas.
Yeah.
I would hope and assume that you'd probably work on the vacant houses first and hopefully get those to a livable standard.
Well, we're going to break it down by area, right? Okay. So the equity of the situation, we felt it best at the commission to just take a geographic area and hit it. And so it'll be vacant houses. Vacant houses have their own kind of, we're working on those anyways. But we'll take it down in small subsections to hit everybody. No one feels like they're being picked on, or someone else doesn't feel like they're being cheated and things like that. So it's really just going to be pick an area and delineate it, and then go after, and then ride through and do that kind of stuff. So we haven't determined what those areas are yet because we don't have the program. It's just, after tonight we'll go back and we'll start that process.
Thank you.
So let me ask you the process when you go out and do the inspection and determine that over 50% of the value of the improvements themselves are going to have to be repaired. I assume everything, including freeboard, is going to have to be brought up to code standards. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So now you got a house that's 8-foot elevation, and depending on where it is in New Bern, somebody's going to have to elevate it to And that's not gonna happen. I mean, a lot of these residents are not gonna have that kind of money. So what's gonna happen there?
Well, we work, it really does depend on the, what's required to meet minimum code and how much money that is and what that cost is. And we take that individually at each time.
So, but if you open the books on that house, and it's all documented, and then the city doesn't make the owner bring it up requirements, the 50% rule, then we're in violation of our FEMA agreement to not make that house be brought up. Is that correct?
To look into maybe new construction, I'd have to look into the floodplain ordinance to see how that plays out.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, so I just wanted to say that I appreciate all of the hard work that the redevelopment, commission does. And I'm just concerned because I can go through that area and see that there are homes that are not in good living conditions, and people are there, there's still tarps on the roof. And I've been in the situations during the hurricane, walking through, knocking on doors. You know, in these communities, individuals are in their situation, and some don't have income, some are disabled, some are on fixed income, and for us to do this, again, it's a tool, and I support it, but I support it down the road when we actually have more affordable housing, so that if there is issues, these individuals have an easy transition into something else, and they're not getting their world lifted up. I mean, we've seen that during the hurricane where people had to be moved out of their place, and so tonight I am gonna vote no against this because I'm concerned about what these residents are gonna have to deal with if the owners don't bring their houses up to par, and dealing with organizations, especially during a pandemic. So I just wanted to let you guys know why I'm voting no.
I want to make sure that I understand something, because I do share those concerns, but I don't believe that you are going out, or that this tool is to go out and go down the street and say, you know, I see a row of shingles missing, you have a tarp, we're coming after you, we're coming. I think this is the extreme, this is a tool for us for extreme cases where, again, I happened on a place where, you know, live wiring hanging out, little children in a house, you know, that, you know, it was terrible. The ceiling was coming down from the water coming in. To me, that's a dangerous situation that a landlord should be taking care of first and foremost. We shouldn't allow that to side, because who suffers? The tenant. You know, that is a consideration. Where does that tenant go? And that's the conversation I had with the tenant. Where do I go? I can't afford to go anywhere. But, you know, the resources of some of the charitable organizations and other things we have, they would have a plan. I don't think this is a blanket to go up and down streets to say we see deficiencies here and there and we're coming after them. I think you're looking for the extreme deficiencies.
Sure, it's another tool in the toolbox, Alderman Bangle, and to address your concern, Alderwoman Harris, that can happen irrespective of this plan anyways, right? So that situation that you just described can happen today. So this plan does nothing to increase the likelihood of those situations happening. We have all the authority in the building code as it is now to go in and, you know, and inspect those homes in those types of situations where the homeowners would be in the same situation anyway. So
right.
This plan doesn't make that more probable.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that you guys are just picking out homes. I'm just saying, when you put this out here and we create this resolution and support it, it now shines a light on that community in that redevelopment area, and we're taking action, and there was no action taken before with the standard that we have for the city. So now, you know, just concerns in that nature. Who can file a claim? If I'm driving down the street and I see something, can I say, oh, that house, can I call the city and say, hey, I think that house is not livable?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. No,
So, and that's another thing too.
It happens now.
Yeah, anybody can do that now.
Right.
But without this.
Right, but
I
what
think
I'm saying is we're shining a light specifically on the redevelopment. And so that's, like I said, that's the concern, is just, I'm worried about the residents and making sure that they have a place to go. I support it, I just can't vote for it tonight because I want more affordable housing in the city for people to be able to transition to, that's all.
And you make you make the exact point of why the commission wanted this program. Now, we debated this for months
Mhm.
on whether to move forward, and it came down to the fact, and I remember Commissioner Wallace and Commissioner Morgan both said, right to your point, they want the spotlight on the area to bring up the standards, to put everybody on notice that that the community needs, the minimum standard needs to be risen. So that's exactly the reason why it's here before you today. I just wanted to put that, they're not here to say that, but that's exactly in the record.
My observation in North Carolina is the cities that, that sit around and wait on state and federal monies to make the improvements. They're the cities like New Bern, the cities that really are making a difference in the inner city as far as the housing situations for people that are either looking outside for funding sources, they're doing it through cooperations with their own enterprise funds, i.e. the electric department, or they're actually through the general fund, putting monies aside, mitigated monies to when you get into a 50% deal or something, that there's ways to work through this. But the city will never, you can put all the tools you want, but until the city financially gets involved in the game, I think you're just going to be doing what we've done for the last 50 years.
One last thing, will you be able to follow up with what the mayor said in regards to the flood? Because the majority of Duffyfield is in the flood zone,
Correct,
so
and you'll find many houses that have been
we'll
elevated.
have to be, meet those standards, so would you, so.
I'll look for the exemptions. I
Okay.
know there are exemptions, and
Okay.
I don't have the ordinance in front of me. But again, we're very flexible. There's construction standards that you can use
Mhm.
to keep from being elevated.
Gotcha.
And Jeff, I know that you and your department are working diligently in trying to, come about resources and doing things the right way for our homeowners and renters. And, I have to agree with the mayor about a lot of structures that's air property that's needs to be demolished, and they're just standing there. We got to do something with those properties. And you and I are working with, I'm just going to say the greenhouse. I'm not going to give no address, but things like that, that property needs to be demolished or either brought up to code. So just continue to do the hard work that you're doing, and hopefully that we can receive more landlords to step up to the plate and get these rental properties up to compliance. So
it's a process. I have full confidence in the success of the redevelopment plan, the redevelopment commission. No reason to believe otherwise. They're doing great work, and keep doing it every month.
Alderman,
Jeff, hopefully it's my last question or comment. Is someone within the redevelopment commission working with residents or tenants that need better housing to help make that connection throughout the community? Because there's been a lot of affordable housing that's been built. There's several apartment complexes, low-income tax credits. Is there someone that's making the connection calls? We've had this discussion before with regards to the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority is not communicating with these tax credit projects because they don't want to lose the funding that they receive from HUD. And, it should be about the better opportunity for the residents, not whether or not a particular government entity continues to receive a funding stream. And my question is someone there to help with that transition, to point to them, to say, look, I know you can't, because we've heard some stories about folks that are paying some astronomical amounts for houses that have a hole in the floor that they don't even have a toilet.
Correct.
So, that's how bad some of this situation is. So is there somebody there that's helping to make that connection?
Well, we're beginning that process now, okay? So we're in the process of securing property, in the process of finding partnerships with a community development organization who can build new housing for us. So yes, we are actually have our strategic planning session as a board on Thursday, and all that will be discussed. So we don't have any places for them to go yet, but we will, and we'll have that interaction and that engagement with the community to, first of all, discuss what kind of product and what that product should look like in the community, and through that outreach, it'll be well known that we have a rehabilitation going on one property right now. So We don't have anything we don't have an inventory yet as a redevelopment commission. We're getting it. And at that point, yes, then we will be reaching out in the community and everyone will know this is a redevelopment commission house. It's new, it's energy efficient, it's safe, and that we're looking for tenants.
So that's great. I guess my point is for the property that is available in town right now, because the Housing Authority has 10 openings right now, 10 vacancies. So
That's in
is
the
there
towers.
somebody that's helping make that connection with what is available at this point in
I
time?
wasn't aware of that, so I don't have anybody in development services doing that work.
Okay.
I think it would be, Jeff, to your point, Alderman Odom, to your point, I think that's a good idea because there are vacancies within the Housing Authority right now. There is the tax credit property off of Moose Boulevard, Can Drive, I don't know if it's near your neighborhood, but that's going to have 80 units there that are going to be coming online shortly. Carolina Avenue will be coming online, so these are available properties that will be coming online, and it would be very helpful, and I'll be attending the workshop. We need to talk about that, the coordination of knowing what's available out there and how we get that word to the residents in areas to find better housing.
Yeah, from speaking with the developers of those projects, I mean, they have an incredible backlog. I don't think they're hurting for applications, so I wasn't aware that there are vacancies anywhere, quite honestly. And if there are, then we can easily work on getting that
Well,
word out.
there's 10 at the towers, I believe, and 1 at Trent Court currently.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yeah, my question is for Scott. Based on what the mayor was saying, like what happened, whatever, 100 years ago, 10 years ago, if we were to be progressive and tear these buildings down, obviously there's a potential of a lawsuit, but what legally are we able to do with the land after we've done that? Are we able to rebuild it and then just worry about if we're gonna get sued down the road?
Right, well, lots to unpack there. I'm not aware of any files that we currently are processing that we don't have the titles understood.
Okay.
So anything that is queued up to be torn down is just a question of budgeting the money to go tear them down. So there are no bottlenecks or legal issues with tearing down what needs to get torn down right now.
Okay.
And once that happens, a lien goes on the property. If the lien is not paid, the city and county foreclose on that cost. The property comes back to the city and county. It gets sold or reconveyed to the Redevelopment Commission.
Okay.
Wait a minute, for the manager, is money been a problem getting things torn down that need demolished?
I think we've been tearing stuff down. I don't know. I mean, we're tearing them down as we get them.
Alderwoman Harris, do you have anything else on that?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, where are we on this item?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving a residential property periodic inspection program per section 2.1.2 of the redevelopment plan.
Second.
Second.
Motion and second, is there further discussion? Let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Bingham.
Alderman Bingle?
Yes?
Alderwoman Harris?
No.
Alderman Aster?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
No.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Motion carries. On number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 7 is a resolution approving an amendment to the 2020 Annual Action Plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program. As HUD requires the Community Development Block Grant entitlement cities to submit an annual action plan summarizing the actions, activities, and resources that will be used to address the needs and goals identified in our strategic plan section of the 2020 Consolidated Plan. We held a public hearing, as you recall, at our last board meeting on February the 9th to receive comments on the proposed amendment. And the amendment includes HUD's third round of CDBG CV funds, which is the coronavirus funds, and describes how that funding will be utilized. The latest funds in the amount of $194,483, bringing our total to $346,735. We have detailed that in very much detail as far as how we plan on using that in our previous board meetings. Ms. Owen Taylor is here if you have any questions for us. Otherwise, the board needs to consider adopting this amendment.
This was the stuff that you talked about last meeting, how we were breaking it down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the 2020 Annual Action Plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom,
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 8.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 8 is a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute contract documents for Hurricane Florence Category A drainage ditch project within the Jimmie's Creek Drainage Basin. As you're aware, we've been working on numerous projects for the past several years to remove sediment and debris from all the drainage ditches throughout the city that the city is responsible for. The work to address the Jimmie's Creek Drainage Basin Category A project was put out to bid. Grillet Construction Company, LLC, submitted the lowest bid at $449,650. It's requested that the city manager be authorized to execute this contract for the portion of the project, along with any change orders within this budgeted amount. Mr. Montaigne has included a memo, along with other pertinent information in your packet. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Alderman Odom.
Mark or Matt, where is Grillet located?
It's actually Grillo. They're from Louisiana. They're actually working in the northeastern part of the state right now, but they have in the past done Corps of Engineers work near New Orleans from past hurricane projects.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Scott, are we able to combine 8 and 9 together?
Yes, ma'am, if it's unanimous.
Okay.
Actually, 8, 9, and 10.
Hmm?
And 10.
Well, I see 10 as Cat D, so.
If there's no more questions?
I'd like to make a, what am I supposed to say? I make, to adopt a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute contract documents for the Hurricane Florence Cat A drainage ditch project within the Jimmie Creek's drainage basin and ditch project within the Trent River Basin.
Second.
Motion and second. Now, which ones are you doing?
I just did 8 and 9 because I saw that 10 was D.
Are you doing 10 also?
Can I put 10 in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and category D, Trent Village Retaining Wall Project.
Second.
Okay. So we're doing 8, 9, 10, and we do have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? See the none, let's have roll call starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 11.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 11 is a resolution approving additional streetlights on Water Street. Sharon Bryant at 2011 Water Street has requested an additional streetlight on that street. Staff evaluated the request and determined the area does not meet the city's light standard and recommended the addition of 2 streetlights on existing poles along the street. The installation of the lights will be $1,166.67 with a monthly charge of $1,688. There's a memo in your packet from the Director of Public Utilities, Mr. Bouchard, with any of the other supporting documentation. We're happy to help you with any questions.
Board, any questions?
Thank you, Charlie, appreciate you. If there's no other questions, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution approving additional streetlights on Water Street.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 12.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 12 is a discussion on elections. As you recall, board, if you will, the previous occasions y'all have discussed the election process. Even Melanie Ray has come prior to this meeting and presented to y'all and recently provided an additional letter with the cost estimates and information on municipal redistricting. This information is included in your packet. This was at the request of Alderman Bingle to put this back on the agenda and the mayor as well. But ultimately, we're in a situation to where Melanie Ray's letter kind of indicated that because of the way New Bern is situated with districts, and also with the fact that the census data is going to be late in being delivered to the city, and our analysis of that would need to be forthcoming after that. We are kind of in a situation to where you've got to look at this next election and what the board wishes to do. I'll point to the letter here, the last basically paragraph. She's highlighted it in red as far as the initial start of it. It says, please take note, municipal redistricting must be completed by the third business day before the opening of the filing period, which is Wednesday, July the 21st of 2021. So that's July coming up. The issue is, as we've heard from the census data folks and people at the state, that it's likely going to be August, possibly even September now, that we're going to finally get this data. So it's going to be very difficult, as you can expect, for us to do any kind of redistricting at all and have our maps correct by the time we meet the deadline of July the 21st, if we're getting it a month after that date. So obviously it puts us in a situation now where we've got to make some decisions. So the second sentence, if the city or town determines that it will not be possible to adopt the redistricting changes by the 21st of July 2021, the municipality may adopt a resolution delaying the election. The election can be postponed until March of 2022. If the city or town postpones the election, then the filing period for the offices will be held from noon on Monday, December the 6th through noon of Friday, December the 17th. So obviously, there's data in here about how much it costs and the different options. We've already had discussions of whether or not we're doing the plurality or whether we're moving to even years, and all these different discussions. But this one here is specific to the redistricting and the redistricting necessary as part of the new census data that was taken, but yet we have not received. So I'll leave it up to y'all at this point on the discussion, because I work for y'all and I will do whatever is directed, but it's up for us to figure all this out and then make a decision on how you're going to move forward with elections.
Okay, do you want to talk about the latest from the State Board of Elections? So, again, I've been calling Melanie Ray to get clarification, because to me, regardless of the conversations we've had before, everything changes because of the delay in the census and COVID, and this letter that she recently sent us about the date. So today, I received a note from her saying they had a webinar today by the North Carolina State Board of Elections. And what they're saying now is that census data needed to address municipal districts and ward elections, which is 62 municipalities, the recommendation is going to be to move all 2021 municipal elections to 2022. So redistricting can be addressed, and it will reduce voter confusion and reduce municipal expenses. So the recommendation would be to move 2022 elections to a May 3rd primary with a July 12th runoff. And then for those that have voted in November, you would go to the November election, which would be 2022.
Now, just to kind of, and I wasn't part of that presentation. The title of it is Legislative Priorities, so I would imagine that is something that the State Board of Education is presenting to.
Board of Elections.
I'm sorry, yes. The Board of Elections is presenting to the legislative bodies so that a law or action can be taken by them, because there is a plethora of different scenarios with municipalities all across the state, and obviously there's 500 and some municipalities. Some of them have plurality, some of them don't, some of them have partisan, some of them don't. So I mean, it's all over the board. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens out of that.
So would you say it's safe to say, and Mr. Attorney, you can chime in on this too, at this point right now, based on the information that we have and the facts that we have, that right now it looks like we have a March election, based on what we're seeing right now.
Yes, ma'am. I can't imagine having this year's election in New Bern on the regular cycle. I don't think it's
Which would be October.
simply impossible. Yes, ma'am.
Why you say it's impossible?
We know New Bern is votes by ward, and we know that the wards have to be equally balanced in terms of number of population, and then thirdly, they have to be designed so that we don't diminish minority strengths in representing public officials. And we know wards 3 and 5 have grown considerably, so we know we are going to have to redraw our wards. We can't start that process until we get the census data that tells us where those people are, so that we can redraw the wards consistent with the law. And we're not going to have the data until mid to late summer, it looks like, which means there's no time to file to run for office, because we don't know what the wards are, so you won't know what ward you live in to file to run for.
You gotta be in it for 60 days or 90 days before, yeah.
Right. So for all those reasons outside of your control, there's no way to pull this off. Then once we get it, there's a whole lot of work in making all of that happen once the data comes in. And it's not gonna be physically possible.
I have a question. Who is redrawing the lines? Do we sit here and have a meeting and discuss what's going on?
Yes, ma'am, exactly.
And so we vote on the redistricting?
Yes, ma'am.
Ultimately, it will be the board that makes that decision. Staff, i.e. Alice, takes the GIS data from the census and applies it to a map and tries to do a best guess. But ultimately, it's the boards to amend and maneuver and wiggle around or accept what she's given or not. That's basically the board. The entire map is drafted as a draft until the board gets it. The board then at that point can make a decision. However, I will say this year, they have eliminated the court process, which is typically the Department of Justice has to have a review period of these types of election situations in New Bern, but this year that's been waived because of this COVID-related delays.
So each individual representative of the current ward will be able to sit here and say what they do and don't want on the maps?
Kind of, but it's not just your ward.
Mhm.
It's citywide. So
Yeah.
staff will try to get you in the ballpark so that your numbers balance. And then all adjustments have to be weighed against the cause and effect. When you move a line over a street, then something else has to move to get you back in balance. So staff will try to get you in the ballpark, and then among yourselves, you will have to work through the exact lines.
Okay.
I think
and
Johnny
then
Ray might have remembered how we did it the last time. Was basically Alice got all of the numbers. She saw the total population, realized it was 30,000, 5,000 in each ward, and then we went in there kind of individually and met with her, and she said, this is what 5,000 people would look like, and this is where it would be. And then what happened was my ward abutted to the 5th ward, and there were changes because of population in those 2 wards, and so the 1st ward alderman and the 5th ward alderman sat with Alice, and it's amazing, her stuff. And so they said, well, if you take this street out and you add this street, she could tell you how many people were in there. So it was just kind of give and take like that with the different wards that it was impacting, and then trial and error, basically, until we somewhat agreed and then came to full board vote.
So the other thing, based on the new discovery of what Alderman Bingle was saying, primaries next year, like this is a nonpartisan election.
Yeah.
Why do we
No.
have primaries?
Well, they call it
The state is not going to dictate how you do your voting. There are 4 flavors.
Okay.
Those are not going to change. You're going to keep your flavor. They can dictate to you that you are going to roll to another year and lose a year off the next term to give everybody time.
So then
So
that's
the
going to
next
put
election,
us,
it'd be a 3-year term?
Yes, ma'am.
Unless the board changes that, and that would require special legislation in order for you to do that, which is part of the
Right.
We've discussed them several times.
I would be surprised if the state legislature changes the election cycle. They could do it, for sure, statewide, by changing the statute. Right now, the statute is based on the odd years.
So with this postponement until March, this is gonna put us into the even year.
Just for
No?
just for one cycle.
Okay.
They're not gonna change.
It's not gonna go forward
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
if
for
the
that
new
one
board
cycle.
wanted to do what Sabrina wanted to do and to put it into an even year, we would make that decision?
The board would ask for a local bill
Yeah.
to give New Bern a special opportunity to have a different rule than everybody else.
Just so we're very clear on the dates here. So if this happens, that means that the election will occur in March of 2022 for a 3-year term, which would have been your typical 4-year term, but it will be a 3-year term and end in 2025, unless you take special changes to the legislature for approval. Then you could move it to 2026 and do a 4-year term, but that would require either this board or the next board to make those requests from the legislature.
So, Mark, in essence, I see what you're saying now. I got a better understanding because we're actually going through 2021 this year here, which will accumulate the next 3 years, which will be our 4-year term.
You basically will have your election in March, as they're talking about. By the time, and that's where this board needs to figure out when the new board would take seat. So at that point, you're looking at anywhere from probably at least 4 to 6 months, I would say, cut off of that 4-year term that would have been 21 to 25.
Your office will be extended to sometime between March of 22 and November, December of 22.
At least.
Wow.
And that won't be your choice.
Yeah, so ironically, that's crazy how that happened. So, what if the information happens to come in before July by a miracle? Then
Yes, ma'am.
everything will stay the same.
That's why I'm saying, sorry, say it again?
I'm saying if everything comes in by that time frame, everything will stay the same then.
It's got to come in and then give staff time to process
Oh, okay,
and
I
give
see what
you
you're saying.
time to process. And that's going to be a 2 or 3 month process if everything goes great.
So basically, we don't have no choice. Our election is going to be in 2022.
Right. The only wild card is if it turns out that the numbers don't require any redistricting, and I can't imagine that. I just can't imagine that being the case, but that's theoretically possible.
You're looking at me, I'm stuck. No, again, at the end of the day, I think you still need to look at the cost. I want to make sure the citizens know this. I'm going to post it. But when I see almost a $74,000 price tag to put on our election, that bothers me. That bothers me. And it's the costs are only going up. And, this board may not make that decision, the next one will, but I think it is something to really consider when we could pay between $5,000 and $7,000 to go in an even year. This is an extreme circumstance because of what's happening, but I think it's something we need to look at and consider going forward. That's it.
Just so I fully understand, right, we will have an election in March 2022. When will the next people take office? You said the end of the year?
We don't know that.
If the election is as soon as March, which is still a big question mark, my guess is you would have the election and then be seated a month or 2 thereafter, depending on any kind of runoffs that might be needed.
So it's possible that we may not have an election in 2022?
I think you will. I don't know if it'll be in March or in November in the typical election season. That's the question. We don't know.
Well, what it said today is that's why they said the recommendation from the State Board of Elections is it would go to, there is a scheduled primary, not necessarily partisan, but there's a scheduled primary in May with runoff in July for November elections. That's the standard process for the midterm election. That they may move municipalities that are in the off year to a May election with a July runoff.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That was the recommendation.
The letter from Melanie stated March of this kind of what is on the books now.
Yes.
And then what the State Board of Elections is recommending as far as legislative action is 3 dates. May 3rd as a primary, July the 12th as a second primary, and November the 8th as a general election. So most likely that May and with a follow-up runoff in July is probably what you're going to be looking at. Because more than likely we will have the data from the census by that point. We will have the discussions regarding the redistricting. We will have the maps adopted and modified, and at that point we can move forward with an election. But considering we're not getting the map data or the census data until at least August, probably September, there's no way we're going to be able to do all of that work and have it whenever July is the deadline anyways.
Right when I was about to make my announcement. All right.
Anything else on that item? Let's go to appointments. Alderman Bingle.
None tonight, sir.
Alderwoman Harris.
None, ma'am.
Alderman Aster.
None.
Alderman Kinsey.
No, sir.
Alderman Best.
None.
And Alderman Odom.
None, sir.
Attorney's report. City manager's report.
Mayor, I have one thing I believe it's all I have, but it's a pretty important one. As you can see, we've been testing out some different things here in City Hall with regards to this room and colors, and as you see, we've taken out some sections over here on the crown. We're running into some other issues, but ultimately, because of some of the damages we've sustained here in Florence, we're finally through all the FEMA process. We've got some work we need to do in this courtroom and a lot of other places in City Hall, but primarily this courtroom. And because of the detail of the plastering that needs to be done in here and the amount of work and setting up scaffolding and the painting and the carpet and everything else that's got to be done, it's going to take a little while. So I need the board to start thinking about, I don't know if you want to make the decision tonight, but I need the board to start thinking about what our plans are as far as meeting times and locations and dates post our meeting on March the 9th. We will have our meeting in here on March the 9th as scheduled. But the second meeting in March and possibly the first meeting in April, we need to consider how we're going to have that meeting, whether it's going to be off-site at another location, whether it's going to be Zoom. But I just need some direction from the board on how you would like to move forward with that. I'm not asking specifically for a date tonight unless you want to make that, but I do need some direction moving forward so we can start seeking out at least to find out if some locations are available.
Well, Mark, I would like to have the meeting rather than have Zoom, and my recommendation would be is to contact the community college and see if we can use Oringer Hall, because there's plenty of seats for people to social distance. We could be up on the stage. Their acoustics are good. They have all the equipment, the mics and things like that. Excuse me?
What about the convention center?
Well, we'd have to pay for that.
Pay for it,
And it's, we tried to do our retreat there, and it was what, $700?
at least, yeah.
Yeah,
The county gonna charge us?
Yes.
And what about the community college? It's free?
Well,
Well, that's what I've got to reach out. So,
right.
I mean,
I think that they would probably work something with us. I would think they would. But,
Gee.
don't you, I don't know, I just thought that would give us plenty of room to spread out for any citizens that wanted to come, and
I would hope
be a
as
great
good of the
location.
partners we've been with the Volt Center and their mission to get people educated, they would work with
Yeah,
us
I know.
on
We
2
get on
meetings
the
that we could
payment
have
plan or
off-site.
something. Jesus. I'm in support wherever.
I like the order. I do. How's the rest of the board?
Community college sounds great to me.
Sure.
I'll reach out to Dr. Stats then to try to find out if that's available with those dates, and I'll report back to you at our next board meeting.
Okay, anything else? In the manager's report.
I think that's all I have tonight, sir.
Okay, new business, Alderman Odom.
None tonight, sir. Thank you.
Alderman Best.
None.
Alderman Kinsey.
No, sir.
Alderwoman Harris.
The only thing I want to say is congratulations to he's a commissioner on the redevelopment, to Barry Wallace, for his promotion to, what is it, up in the state
state level, yeah.
state level for, we are losing him as a principal in Craven County, but we have him at the top, so congratulations to Barry Wallace. We appreciate all your hard work and dedication to your city, the county, your students, the redevelopment, so thank you for all that you do.
Okay. Alderman Bingle.
Yes, I have a couple of things tonight. I wanted to update the board. We're continuing, at least I'm continuing to get emails on Suddenlink, people posting left and right. And I did want to report back to the board that on Saturday, February 13th, a meeting was held that included Congressman Greg Murphy, State Representative Steve Tyson, Keith Kidwell, Chris Humphrey, Commissioners Jason Jones, Denny Bucher, Mayors Dana Outlaw, Don Hardy from Kinston, John Kirtland from Riverbend, and included myself and Alderman Odom. Also present was a representative from Google Fiber and Pear Electronics. I wanted to give a summary of the discussion. Information was shared about experiences with dealing with Suddenlink personally on behalf of the members there, and what was relayed from our citizens and businesses. We agreed that today that the meeting would be a fact-finding meeting and what next steps would be needed. Representatives from Google Fiber discussed their expansion into some North Carolina markets and what was necessary to have them in our markets. We had discussions surrounding current state legislature and its impact on limiting competition. We also discussed federal funding sources availability, were there any? And then we discussed the strong need for reliable internet service for rural areas, as well as additional internet needs due to COVID-19 and its impact on our schools and businesses that needed to work from home. So we put together some action steps, and those steps were to ask our state representatives to investigate any legislative changes to current legislation as well as new legislation. We've asked the congressmen to research what federal funds, maybe under the CARES Act, may be available for infrastructure. And then we asked the municipalities to look at other companies such as Metronet and other companies and other ideas to bring in our communities. And we did say that we would schedule another meeting in a couple of months to follow up. So I did want to let the board know we are continuing to work on this, the importance of it. And I think this is what the citizens are asking us to do. So that was the first thing I have. I also want to mention that this week, and Amanda, you can help me on this, we're doing the resiliency, the hazard mitigation resiliency workshops. And I know they held one Monday. I'm going to participate in the one tomorrow. And the main theme is the education and the outreach, importance of getting this information out there. Do you want to make a few comments about it? I'm looking forward to participating. I know they did have one yesterday.
Yes, as part of our resiliency and hazard mitigation planning process, we are to the point now where we have completed the preliminary risk and vulnerability assessment, and now we are doing a series of stakeholder workshops and have invited stakeholders at various levels from federal, state, and local entities, as well as individual citizens to participate. It is a two-series workshop at this point. We had one on Monday that was successful and well attended, and have another one tomorrow afternoon that will continue to build on the conversation. There were 5 breakout sessions surrounding different topics, such as public outreach and education, engineering solutions, green infrastructure solutions as well, and I'm amiss to name the other 2 off the top of my head, but it's surrounding the various topics that will then become the recommendations in the draft plan that will again come before the public for further comment. And this will basically help determine the feedback from the community, the feedback that we see from the risk and vulnerability assessment, to identify and prioritize solutions to implement in the future. So the process is going very well, and we appreciate all of our stakeholders and community members that are participating. And if anyone has any questions about this, we do have a resiliency landing page, www.newbernnc.gov/resiliency, takes you directly to the page that kind of outlines this process and where we are. And then, people can email me or email resiliency@newbernnc.gov with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. And then the last thing that I have, I would like to send my most sincere condolences to our former city clerk, Veronica Maddox, who currently works in our Parks and Rec Department, over the recent death of her mother, Miss Helen Evans. Just a wonderful, wonderful woman in this community. I loved her like a mother and just a sweet woman, and I just want to give my condolences to Veronica and her family.
Anybody else at this time? Do we need a closed session tonight? Is there any further business to come before the Newman Board of Aldermen at this time?
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. We are adjourned.